Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game. Today I got a fun and exciting episode for you guys today because we're going over the recently released Air Combat 22, the Namco System 22 game on Switch 2. That's a whole lot of twos and a whole lot of titles, and it's definitely going to be a fun ride. And I'm going to have some Ridge Racer footage at the end as well because I decided I would wait until this game came out to kind of do a combo episode of all these Namco System 22 games that are now getting ported home. Because if you know me and you know the channel, I absolutely love my arcade games, especially ones that had that bespoke custom 3D hardware on board back in the 90s, and these games definitely are still as much fun today as they were back in the 90s. Before you get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. And if Air Combat 22 doesn't sound super familiar, this is what Ace Combat became. This is basically one of the earliest flight sims with a lot of arcade vibes that you could play in arcades, and Namco 100% just nailed it. There's always something super romantic looking about the Namco System 22 arcade graphics. You get perspective correct textures, you get all of these great polygons, and you still get a little bit of pixelation to let you know that you're gaming back in the 90s, even if it is 2025. And as far as the conversion on the arcade archives front on these things, it is absolutely stunning, and I love the fact that at least on Ridge Racer's side, we got that as a launch game for Switch 2, so Ridge Racer is still a console launch game even in 2025, although I wish it was actually a new Ridge Racer game and not just a port of the arcade original. But Air Combat 22 is just one of those classic arcade games that if you played it back in the 90s, you probably fell in love with it, and if you've never played it today, I still can't stress enough just how much fun this game truly is. Now, I would say maybe the price is slightly steep what they're asking for this at right around $16, but it is one of those things. If you love these arcade releases like this and you want to see more Namco System 22 games come home, definitely support this type of stuff because I'd love to see something like the original Time Crisis on Switch 2 using the Joy-Cons as basically a virtual light gun. That would definitely be something that does it for me. Can you tell me down below which Namco System 22 game would you love to see ported to something like the Switch 2 or any other modern console? Dirt Dash would definitely be at the top of my list as well. But these sort of games, these arcade classics, just 100% work as far as actually being modern games are concerned, because not all of us have 2, 3, 4 hours a day to dedicate to a very long game. Sometimes jumping in and playing something for 22 minutes or so, pun very much intended for the title of this game, definitely gives us our gaming fill and lets us move on with our day. And as far as the graphical performance here and the overall frame rate, this is exceptionally good. Now this game of course runs in MAME, but it's one of those things, you get a slight upscale, at least it feels like here, and you also just get some absolutely gorgeous visuals, because you have HDMI coming over the console. However you decide to play, it's just going to look like the best version of a Namco System 22 game you can get. And trust me, you do not want to collect this original arcade hardware. I have exactly one System 22 board in my closet. It is absolutely massive. It takes about 20 minutes to get all wired up, and it's one of those things I rarely have ever taken out of my collection and play it, because it is just such a massive beast that takes forever to actually get running. So having something like this just to sit down on my couch and play within 10 seconds definitely makes the game that much more fun, because it's not a very long game, and honestly, actually wiring this thing up, getting it into my super gun and onto my television takes longer than I actually end up playing the game. And of course, it is trying to go for a little bit of that sim nature as well, so you do have to deal with some of the refueling, which is a fun little mini game in between. But I just love the fact that we're getting these ports from Bandai Namco, and they were talking about in the news recently of trying to go back into their catalog of 3D arcade games, the games that never got ported home that were on custom hardware, and bringing them to a new modern audience. And that's something I'm always advocating for, because even though we have emulation, supporting titles like this that are for sale, tell the companies that you want them and you want more of them, because if something like Air Combat 22 makes money for Bandai Namco, then they're going to try out another game and try to make more money, because that is always the goal. Profit keeps companies alive, and it keeps bringing new fun arcade games and new games developed as well to our systems. But it's time for a soundtrack sample, 45 seconds, and I'm going to move into Ridge Racer in just a moment to talk about the other Namco System 22 game you can play today as a modern port. But enjoy! I mean, it's just awesome music, and there are going to be different modes as well. You're going to see here in the high score mode, the screen is going to shift over slightly to the left, and you're going to have that high score window to the right. So even though this is not exactly the most fully featured port out there, it is a ton of fun, and it really makes me happy, because if you know me and you know the channel, talking about 90s arcade games, especially the ones that had that custom 3D hardware on board, it is something I always loved, because back when these games came out, it was the most impressive 3D that you would see in gaming, because when you went home to your home consoles, they just could not keep up. Only once Dreamcast came out did you start getting some parity between the home console market and the arcade market, unless you were somebody who owned a Neo Geo AES back in the 90s, and pretty much I don't know anyone who had one. Well, let's move over to the other game on System 22 that is available to play today, and one that I meant to review when it came out but ran out of time. That is the original Ridge Racer, and again, it was so absolutely hilarious to me and a lot of other people that this game launched with the Switch 2, because if you remember back on PlayStation 1, Ridge Racer was the launch game that basically everyone wanted to own, and it really showed the promise of 3D coming home. Now obviously the Switch 2 can do a lot better graphics and a lot better gameplay than something like Ridge Racer today, but the fact that even in 2025 Ridge Racer could still be part of a launch lineup is awesome, and honestly I've got no evidence to think this other than my gut feeling. I feel like Namco is kind of seeing how many people would buy something like a Ridge Racer report or remake to the Switch 2 to maybe see if a new Ridge Racer game could do profit, because I know Namco's been talking about delving back into their back catalog, so maybe if something like this does sell well, they actually might greenlight a brand new Ridge Racer game, because I would absolutely love to see that. It's been way too long since we've gotten a new Ridge Racer, and it is one of my favorite arcade racing franchises, not named Daytona USA. And just like Air Combat 22 before, the performance here in the modern port is absolutely exceptional. And this just looks, feels, sounds, plays, and controls like the Ridge Racer I know, love, and remember from both the arcades as well as MAME emulation, because I did an entire Ridge Racer retrospective last year talking about all the games in the franchise, and I said even though the original definitely is still the thinnest as far as content is concerned, as far as its impact and innovation on both the arcade racing genre and as well as 3D games in general, it just absolutely blew everyone's minds when it came out. It was such an important foundational game as to where both 3D games as well as racing games would go, and still to this day for 15-20 minutes it is some of the best racing you can get. And it's one of those things, if the port changed anything like the controls, the handling, or the drifting, it would be instantaneously easy to feel, and honestly here it is absolutely perfect. A big thanks to CoolPup, the moderator of my Discord, for helping with footage as well. He's been a great asset to me recently, as I was basically taking almost 10 days off from the channel to deal with some stuff back east. But we're going to go into a soundtrack sample for Ridge Racer as well, because not only does it have maybe the best soundtrack Namco ever put to a video game, it's also good to listen to the audio quality, because if it didn't sound right, and pretty much everyone knows Ridge Racer's music, you'd 100% know. So go ahead and listen for 45 seconds or so, and I'll come back and talk about what I hope gets ported next, because there's a ton of fun System 22 games that we could enjoy.
Next corner stop, watch yourself.
I mean, it just sounds great to my ear, but you leave me a comment down below and tell me what your favorite Namco System 22 game was. But honestly, even though I love Time Crisis and I think light gun games are my favorite arcade genre, I absolutely want to see Dirt Dash come over to modern consoles, because in MAME emulation, the graphics are 100% there, the audio is 100% there, but the controls and the analog values feel slightly too twitchy. Now, if somebody ported this over to Switch 2 or any other console like that and gave us Dirt Dash with proper controls, I would be there day one buying it. And honestly, what I really hope, and I don't expect whatsoever, is that Namco will bring a lot of these games over to modern platforms and then release a physical collection, because I'd love to own an original copy of Dirt Dash outside of something like a massive arcade board, even if it was just on a compilation cartridge. But again, you tell me down below if you could snap your fingers and make one arcade port from the Namco System 22 come to modern consoles, which one would it be? Because I always love hearing your guys' responses, and I would say Tokyo Wars, especially with an online network hardware component would also be a great choice. But as far as the recently released Air Combat 22 and the Switch 2 launch day Ridge Racer Namco System 22 ports, they're 10 out of 10 amazing, and it makes me so happy that we're getting stuff like this in 2025, especially if more people discover this hardware because I didn't play it back in the day. But short of that, we're done. I'm going to keep racing, keep flying, and I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.